What's up, guys? Today I'm going to show you how I made these travertine terrace pools using 3DCoat, Photoshop, and a little bit of Blender. I'm only going to be showing how I made the actual asset itself. I'm not really going to be covering any of the materials or the pool shader or anything like that. So if you want to see that in a separate video, definitely let me know in the comments below, and I can look into putting together a video for you guys. So let's get started. All right, so real quick, I'm just going to cover the references that I put together for this project. Now, when I was gathering these, I was thinking about a few things and just how I was going to tackle these assets. So the first thing I was thinking about was the different shapes and sizes of each pool. So I needed to come up with a method that was rather quick without sacrificing too much quality in creating a bunch of different sizes of these pools. And then that would allow me to kind of just focus on the other tasks and not, get too bogged down. The second thing I was thinking about was the water and how I was going to tackle that. Each pool has its own depth of, or at least, water depth. So some of these pools are shallow, some are deep, and I needed to come up with a way to distinguish that depth when I add the water shader in later. And with the water shader, I also needed to come up with a way that the water would pretty much fit perfectly within each plane or asset, but also it would show and reveal depth beneath, so it would show the actual formation beneath the water's surface. So I knew that I would actually have to sculpt that first and then add the water in later. And then the last thing was the erosion detail on the sides of these formations. It almost looks like a salt rock formation type. I really don't know what it is, but it's a really cool look. And I knew that if I went online, which I did, I didn't really find any materials that had this kind of look. So I knew I was going to have to sculpt it. I just needed to come up with a way that I could do it rather quickly, so I wasn't sitting here for weeks sculpting all of these assets by hand. So I'm going to show you guys how I did that as well. Okay, now we are in Photoshop, and these are some of the shapes that I made when I was creating the terraces. So first thing we're going to do is we're just going to make a shape real quick, and I'll explain how it works. So let's actually grab these, copy them, and then just make them smaller. Just move them up there. And then make this black. So there's a few ways we can do this. One is we just draw it with a round brush, which is what comes with Photoshop. You can just use one of those. So, I don't know, just something random. Like that. And then obviously it's gonna have these weird rivets on the outside. We're gonna have to fix that. So maybe just something like that. So I'm just using the lasso tool and then just select the inverse, and then there's our shape. I'll make another one with maybe the cloud brush. But the problem with the cloud brush is that it's not going to create a perfect shape, but it will allow us to kind of just block in a shape really quick, and then I can just trace the inside after. So something like that maybe. It looks a little bit rough, but all we do is just trace the inside. And the reason I'm doing this is because my first round of shapes that I made, I ran into problems because if we were to think about taking this shape and extruding it outside of a plane from the side view, real quick, I'll just draw it. So here's our shape, right? And then we're looking at it from the side perspective. So in so it's like extruded. The problem that you run into if your shape is too complicated is it's going to create a bunch of different valleys and ridges inside of the shape. And you definitely want to avoid that, because that's the kind of detail that, first off, we don't need that, and second, we can sculpt that in later. So just try to keep your shape simplistic in its form, much like these, and then you can always sculpt that stuff later. So I'll make one more shape. Just use the lasso tool. Maybe like a U shape or something. It's kind of cool. Looks like the letter J almost. I might just cut this part off. There we go. Okay, so out of these three, I have enough to work with. But before I even go into 3DCoat for these stencils, I need to do just a few things. So I'm going to scale these guys up. And then turn them off. And we can make a new background. So we're going to need two things for the stencils. One is the primary shape. So this is our primary shape. And then I just got to clean it up just a smidge, just so it's a bit more smooth. That should be fine. And then just fill it, because it's a little dark over there. Okay, so we have our primary shape, so we just save this. So we'll just call this shape 2. And then what we also need is we need a version of this shape that's a little bit more thin on the inside, because that shape is going to dictate what we're extruding for the pool on that form. So if we just double click this, make a new layer, double click it, and then go into stroke, and then turn this to red, we can dictate the size of the pool that's going to be on the inside. But if we go back to our references, we need to pay attention to the border that's around. So like, how thick do you really want your border before it actually starts forming the water surface in the pool inside? So this one's actually pretty thin. And then something like this is a little bit more thick. So maybe we could just do something in the middle. So something like, maybe like that. So change it back to black. And then now we have our inside pool shape. So we call this, go to shape 2, and just type shape 2 underscore pool. Save. And now we're pretty much good to go. So I'll see you guys in 3DCoat to start sculpting the asset. All right, so we are in 3DCoat now, and first thing we need to do is we need to import our stencils that we just made. So to do that, you go to the Stencils tab over here, and I'm gonna go to my travertine shapes folder that I created back when I was making the other assets. And you just gotta find your shape. So we're gonna import these individually. So we'll do shape 2 first, click that. And then click plus again, and then do shape 2 pool. So now we have both our shapes imported. And we're gonna close this for now. We need to bring in a cube to start with for our geometry. So this is just basically stretched into a rectangle. So you can do the same thing once you have that ready. I would suggest that you have the 3D grid here turned on, because if your shape is any bigger than this, like maybe it's like huge, it's going to be a massive try count and it might crash. So just be careful with how big you make your actual shape. So something like this is fine. So if we hit enter, see already something like that's, it's 2.1 mil tries. So now we are good to create our shape. So we go to the pose tool, click our shape of the stencil, and then just use this diamond shape here to scale it. That looks pretty good. And before I do that, I'm actually going to I'm going to hit E with the pose tool selected. By default, I think 3DCoat, you don't have any of these tools up here. You have to do that yourself. This is kind of just like a quick way to grab certain tools you like. But you find the pose tool, I think it's right here. And then just click that. And then hit E on your keyboard. And then we have a few things we can change. So I'm going to click ignore back faces, number 1. I'm also going to click this rectangle shape. And that'll be how we make our shape. So just start dragging in orthographic view from top-down perspective. And we have our selection now, but the selection here is a little bit jagged. So if we just click smooth selection, that should smooth it out. I might actually just click it one more time. And then if I close the stencil and then hit reset axis, just to make sure it's perfectly straight up. And we just drag up, and then we have our pool shape. So hit enter when you're done, and now we have our pool shape. Now, or our terrace shape. Now we have to do the pool. So it's the same thing. Make it smaller, and then just try to fit it in your extrusion. And this is just going to dictate the size of the inner pool. But you can see why we did that stroke method in Photoshop, because this surface here is pretty much our stroke. So just line it up however you want, and then same thing. Drag, make our selection, close the stencil, and then hit reset axis, smooth selection. Might do it one more time, and then just drag down. I think that's probably a good depth. Maybe a bit more, something like this. There we go. And now that we have our shape here, we can actually cut off the bottom of the rest because we don't need it. So just cut that off like that. And what's cool about 3DCoat is that it is voxel based, so any type of cut you make like this, it's automatically going to fill that in because it's actual voxels. It's not your traditional modeling software, which are generally not voxel based. So okay, so now we need to figure out a few things. First, I'm going to bring this down. All right, so now we just need to focus on the primary shapes in the sculpt first before we start adding any details. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the floor. Just go up here to top right and just click this grid, and then that'll turn it off. And what we can do is we can start thinking about the primary shapes of the side here. So what I want to do is I'm going to grab the pose tool, and I'm actually going to go back to stencils, and we'll go to gradients, and I'm going to grab this gradient, and I'm going to use this as a selection. So my thinking is that I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it kind of bulge out like this, and then kind of go in and then bulge back out. So in terms of the frequency of like that occurring on the side, I'll probably do a larger bottom first. So we just grab the pose tool and do this selection here. Oh, I need to turn on, or turn that off rather. So we make our selection, and then we look up here, and then we can kind of just drag out a bit. Oh, I need to smooth the selection. Let's do 5 times. And then now if we drag out, it should, no, maybe we just do 10. There we go. We have much more smooth transition of that. So I'm gonna make it come out like that, and then hit OK. And then what we can actually do is we can close this because I'm going to sculpt the other thing afterwards. So first thing we need to do is we need to go to our build tool, and then I'm going to use one of my brushes that I have previously made, and I can actually supply these stencils to you guys in the description below if you guys want those. So what we do is basically just start sculpting on the side of this. But first we need to change the brush rotation to 0, and then just make sure that rotate alpha along brushstroke is selected. And then just real quick, if you hold Control with your brush, you can make the brush bigger and smaller by hitting the parentheses or the brackets on your keyboard. You can also change the size up here as well, but I like to use the brackets. And then you can also right-click and drag. And also to change the depth, if you hold right-click on your mouse, this red line will essentially determine how deep or how much relief the brush is affecting. So if we just go to something like that, and then since we are sculpting inward, not outward, so if we just regularly sculpt, it's going to protrude out. We want to protrude in, so we just hold Control and then just start sculpting like this. So let me do this, and I'll see you guys when this is finished. Okay, so now that we have that that shape pretty much sculpted in there around the whole surface, we can start thinking about the other areas that we want to sculpt. So I don't want to speed this up, but I'm probably going to focus again on like what we talked about, where this kind of bulges out. So we can either sculpt this like this using this brush, and then just kind of turn the strength up and do it that way. And then all that fine detail and stuff, we're actually going to do that last. So we just focus on this. And we can also start thinking about the bottom as well, because if we go to the references, we could, if we really wanted to, instead of making it go, these streaks kind of go all the way down to the base, we could actually stop it at some point and turn it into like a fluffy cotton look as well. So I'm pretty sure I made a brush for that, and let me just find that brush. So this brush here will pretty much do that. So if we turn on jitter and just turn the strength up, it should make like a fluffy cotton look. So I'm going to do this real quick, and just so you guys don't have to watch this whole thing, and then we can talk about what to do next when this is done. All right, so now that it's done, we need to focus a little bit on the inside of the pool. So the way that I did that was I actually go to the extrude brush instead and switch back to this cotton brush. And then what we can do from a top-down perspective is we could just, we need to change back to this brush. We could start kind of sculpting like this, and then that'll give us that that eroded detail on the inside of the pool floor. So we can just do this real quick, maybe turn the strength down to like 5. And then what's cool about this is we can actually just decide like what kind of shape and look we want on the inside of this pool. So maybe we could do like a shape here, and then do a smaller shape here, and then maybe just do one more shape up here. Kind of like that. And then you can kind of rinse and repeat and do that until you're happy with the results. So just do something there, maybe do some here. So it kind of creates that cool like organic look pretty quickly. And then we also need to focus on the inside of the pool wall here. So we could pretty much do the same thing with this brush, and then just kind of sculpt this in on the sides of these walls here. Turn up the strength a bit. I might actually have to up the. I'm gonna do change this to global space real quick, just kind of reset the detail, and then I can continue sculpting here. I might actually up the detail just a little bit, 1.25. So now we're at 6 million, so just kind of be aware of that. What we could also do is we could chop this guy off, but I don't really think it's necessary. Maybe change the build tool. And I think the extrude's actually better. Because all we're really trying to do is we're just trying to bulge this out and create some inflation. And we could use the inflate tool as well. But I think this kind of gives it like an organic look on the inside there. And then we can always just smooth this out as well. Because this, I think this cotton ball look is probably a little bit too detailed. it's a bit too much. And also it doesn't really match the erosion that's occurring here. So what I can do is smooth this out. Basically just smooth this out, and then we can just sculpt over top of it with the previous brushes we were using, because I think that's probably more of the look that I want to go for. So just smooth this out. But what's great is that it still gave us that inflation there. It kind of sculpted the form out a bit, so we can still use that. We just don't like the detail that it created. So we just smooth this guy out, and then we can sculpt back on top of it. And if we go back to our previous brush, we can go to the build tool, turn off jitter, and then just, yeah, sculpt this back in. So, which I think is definitely more along the lines of like what we're looking for. We just got to turn the strength down. All right, so now that we have that pretty much figured out, I mean, you can kind of just sit here and play with this and figure out like a workflow that works better for you. But this is kind of my agenda when I was making these assets. I really just kind of focused on these core principles to not be spending too much time on each asset. And then the final thing that I wanted to do was get more of that detail on the side, like the references. So what I did was I created some stencils of different types of soil and mud that I found like on references like of Pinterest and stuff like that. So these are essentially just depth maps that I created using photos of other types of terrain in the world that kind of resemble that same detail that we're trying to achieve on the side here. So if we were to grab this guy and put it on the side of this thing here, something like that, we could try and use the build tool and then just change to the rectangle, hit ignore back faces, and we could maybe move this down. And if we drag, it should create some cool detail. So that's a cool look. Like you can see, it almost looks like a melted candle. And we could just keep doing this around the whole thing until we're happy with it. So let me go back to the stencil I was using. I think it's this one. So we can grab this, resize it, maybe like that, and then just drag. Maybe do it another time. And I think I might want to actually just hit 2 global space. So what that really does is, the reason I keep doing that is because when you hit this button, you're essentially resetting the asset within the world space that it exists in. So if, for example, we were to like resize it and stretch it, you would hit that because it resets the whole sculpt. Because it might look funky if you don't do that. So from this method, you can see that it's kind of stretching the walls here. So you kind of have to play around with the approach on how you decide to like add this sculpted detail. So this is one method we could use. Another method we could use is if we just undo here. We could also make this a little bit smaller and then stretch it up a bit like that, and then drag. So it's still going to stretch because it's based on like how you're looking at it. So one other way we can do this is just use the extrude brush, and then use this brush here, make sure jitter's on, and then we can kind of just use it this way. And as you see, it's still going to create that detail. It's just, it's not going to stretch because it's based on where you're painting inside that stencil. So I'm going to change stencils. I'm going to go back to this one because I really like the detail of this one. So just go like that. And then it should create that detail for us. So basically you could just do this around the whole object, and it'll give you some cool results. But I'm actually going to change brushes because I don't like what this brush is doing. So I could do something more like this. There we go. And then just like rinse and repeat. So you just move it over, sculpt this. If you guys want access to these soil brushes, I can actually, or these stencils, I can supply that in the description below. All right, so now we have the sides kind of sculpted there. So we can always drive the detail later with textures as well. But this is pretty much, if we go to render view, let's see what the asset looks like. So I think for the sake of the video, I'll just keep it at this. Like we could definitely spend more time. Like you can see the texture here kind of just doesn't match with that, so I could fix that real quick. But yeah, once you're happy with your sculpt, we just have to figure out the water plane. The water plane is actually pretty simple. So let me go back to sculpt here, and I'll fix the side there with this this stencil. All right, so now we just need to get this guy exported into Blender or whatever 3D package that you're using. And we need to create the water. We could try and create the water in 3DCoat, which is very easy. We would basically just make that shape, the stencil shape we made, and turn it into geometry. But the problem with that is that since this is 3DCoat and it's voxels, it's going to create a massive poly count. And in Blender, we can only do it for, you know, a very tiny fraction of the cost. It'll probably only be like I don't know, less than like a few hundred vertices. So we're going to do that. So first we need to export this, and we just go to File up here, Export, and there's two selections. We could do Scene or Selected Objects. And since this is only one object, we could just do Export Scene. So we just hit Export Scene, and then just call it whatever you want. Pool Asset. We'll just type in Terrace Pool 1. Hit Save. And then we'll get this pop-up here, which essentially just allows us to distinguish the amount of poly count that we have in the asset when it's exported. So I'm going to bring this down to something like maybe just 2 mil, and then I can just decimate it. So we hit OK, and it'll decimate it. All right, so now that we're in Blender, we just need to import our assets. So we go to File, Import, and we do OBJ. And then we just find the folder where we exported this. All right, and then there's our asset. So, all right, so now to make the water, it's actually very simple. There's two ways we could do it. One is we just get a plane, scale it up. And I think this asset's way too big, so I might actually have to scale it down a bit. Yeah, it's huge. So let's just make it a little bit smaller. I have a little scale dude in the scene here because that is the actual real world scale of a person. So we should probably scale this down to just be relatively within the realm of the scale of this human. Maybe a little bit bigger, so something like that. Okay, so we grab our plane here and then just bring it up here so we can see it above the asset. And then one thing we could do is we could basically just move the vertices around like this, and then just kind of, you know, rinse and repeat, extrude this which works fine. This is, you know, this is totally fine. So just keep doing this until this is filled in. There we go. So now we have our pool shape, and it is kind of like a janky shape. So we could always, you know, fix this by just creating more points, and then just kind of moving this around. But then once we have the shape, you know, we're good to go. There we go. And then now all we need to do is just extrude this. So if we were to place this down here, you can see it fits perfectly within this asset. And then we just need to extrude it so that we actually have volume beneath. So basically just extrude it down so that it's just beneath the pool bottom floor. And then that's pretty much it. And then there's another way we could do this. We could just use an add-on, but since you guys, you know, you would have to pay for that, I don't want to show that method. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So now we could, you know, we could always get into the fun part, which is like texturing and making the water look super realistic. But for the sake of this video, you know, I wanted to just focus on actually creating the asset itself. And then if you guys want to see that, I can always make it a separate video in showing how to approach the materials and the water and all that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you found a lot of this useful. And if you guys have any comments or feedback on if you do want to see the material version of this and, you know, creating the water material and all that stuff, or just a new idea for a new video, just let me know in the comments below. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.